Number 11 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of September 23rd, 2020. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So that you are aware, the webcast will show only the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. As all of the members of Parliament and all of the witnesses have heard the spiel before, I'll keep it mercifully short. Please open your mic when you're speaking and close it when you aren't. Please address all questions and comments through the chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 108 Sub 2, the committee will continue its study of the Supplementary Estimates B. We're pleased to have with us this afternoon the Honourable Carla Qualtrough, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion. And from ESDC, Graham Flack, Deputy Minister, Employment and Social Development, Benoit Robidoux, Assistant Deputy Minister, and Mark Perlman, Chief Financial Officer and Senior Assistant Deputy Minister. Welcome back to all the officials. And also to you, Minister, you have the floor for 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and as I am happy to be here. And thank you for inviting me to join you today. I am accompanied, as you said, by Graham Flack, my Deputy Minister, Benoit Robidoux, my Associate Deputy Minister, and Mark Perlman, my Chief Financial Officer for ESDC. Today I'll be speaking to Supplementary Estimates B for 2020-2021. As you know, these supplementary estimates were tabled in the House of Commons on October 22nd and passed through the House just 3 nights ago. These supplementary estimates represent an additional $31.4 billion in planned budgetary expenditures. The bulk of this investment, $28.5 billion, can be attributed to the Canada Emergency Response Benefit payments under statutory authorities delivered by Service Canada and the CRA. From March to September, the CERB helped almost 9 million Canadian workers get through a very difficult period. I also note these supplementary estimates include funding for the Safe Restart Agreement, training for workers, early learning and childcare, youth programming, and training for personal support worker interns, just to name a few. Since March 2020, our world has completely changed, but our government's priorities, supporting Canadian workers, investing in youth, and helping people overcome barriers to training and working, remain the same. When the pandemic first hit, we put a moratorium on Canada Student Loan and Canada Apprentice Loan repayments and introduced the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. We then quickly put in place the Canada Emergency Student Benefit to support students and recent grads who were faced with fewer job opportunities in the summer. We also created thousands of jobs and training opportunities for youth and provided a one-time payment for persons with disabilities. As the CERB was coming to an end, we made changes to the EI program so that more people could access benefits, including regular and special benefits. For Canadians who don't qualify for EI, we introduced a complementary new suite of recovery benefits: the Canada Recovery Benefit, the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit, and the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit. Together, these measures are helping millions of Canadians through this challenging time. Mr. Chair, I'd now like to share a few words about the Fall Economic Statement. There are a lot of important investments being made through the FEST to help ensure Canadian workers, young Canadians, students, and vulnerable populations like Canadians with disabilities are part of Canada's recovery. Things like easing the burden of student debt by eliminating the interest on repayment of the federal portion of the Canada Student Loans and Canada Apprentice Loans for 2021-2022, expanding the Canada Summer Jobs programs to fund 120,000 jobs, and enhancing the Youth Employment and Skills Strategy to create 45,000 job placements to help youth facing barriers. We will also maintain our commitment to implement the changes to the Registered Disability Savings Plans announced in Budget 2019 for beneficiaries who cease to be eligible for the disability tax credit. We'll make targeted investments in training to support the most vulnerable and hardest hit by the pandemic, including women, racialized Canadians, Indigenous people, persons with disabilities, and skilled newcomers to Canada. This will be the largest investment in training in Canadian history. We will invest in the Opportunities Fund for Persons with Disabilities, the Indigenous Skills and Employment Training Program, and the Foreign Credential Recognition Program. Lastly, we are investing in a new pilot program designed to support marginalized women by providing and testing pre-employment and skill development support. I'm confident it will be a game changer for women by finding better ways to support them to join the workforce or get better jobs in communities across the country. The Fall Economic Statement is a plan to build back better. Together, we have the opportunity to provide Canadians with the certainty they need, along with the resources that will help them achieve success. I hope we can work together to pass Bill C-14 and see these important measures come to fruition sooner rather than later. Mr. Chair, the appropriations requested in the supplementary estimates be passed this week have allowed us to continue to support Canadians during the pandemic and beyond. My officials and I are happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We're going to begin with Mr. Kent for the Conservatives, please, for 6 minutes.
And thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to begin by thanking the Minister for her direct answers in committees of the House and the Senate during the COVID pandemic. A sterling example, I think, for some of her cabinet colleagues. Chair, I'd like to begin today with a letter from a Thornhill constituent, David Burke, who writes, I received a letter from CRA yesterday saying they would not confirm that I met the requirements under CERB, namely that I earned a self-employment income of at least $5,000 during 2019 or for the previous 12 months from the date of my first application for CERB. I did in fact earn over $13,000 during 2019, but with some expenses, depreciation and home office expenses, it brought my net income to zero. The website for CERB made no mention of net income, but rather asked if I earned self-employment income of at least $5,000 during 2019. I believe they're now changing the rules and are asking for the money back. Money in the bank, Mr. Burke writes, versus tax return net income are two distinct things. One is accounting, the other is real life. Please try to rectify this problem. So, Chair, through you, does the Minister see where the original wording promoting CERB was misleading for thousands of self-employed Canadians?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure you can hear me. I thank you for the questions. I think a couple of things I guess I would say. First of all, we have to remember the CERB was there to help, 9 million people pay their bills and support their families. The CRA has suspended collection activity on new debt during COVID-19, and the letters that were issued were not letters demanding immediate payment. Rather, they were letters informing Canadians that CRA could not verify that they met the criteria. In this case, the $5,000 income threshold. I feel like I've been clear from the beginning when asked, and I know our background information, when I was always asked from the beginning how self-employment income was calculated, I always said net income. The backgrounder said that. I feel I feel bad that people have misunderstood, or that maybe the way we communicated has resulted in this misunderstanding, but I can assure the member that we didn't change the eligibility criteria. This is how CRA calculates self-employment income. It's, I don't know how the individual constituent, how his income flows or what have you, but there's also a chance that during the 12 months, not just 2019, perhaps he made enough income net to qualify for the $5,000 threshold. The purpose of the CRA letter was to give people information that at this time we couldn't verify eligibility. So if they could prove eligibility, if they could maybe file their 2019 taxes or prove income during the past 12 months, then please do so. And if they turned out not to be eligible, if they could remedy it by the end of the year, their tax slip information would be more accurate going into next year.
Okay, thank you, Minister. As long as you understand that dozens of complaints that I have received, and I've heard of, hundreds more from others, it would seem that there are probably thousands of Canadians who, in the COVID crisis, with the loss of income, read that original promotion for CERB, where there's no mention of net. Many of them say the first time they saw the word net was in the CRA letter, which they find very distressing. Some of them say They simply can't afford to repay $14,000. Some are talking about having to sell tools, equipment, and even their home.
And I'm deeply sorry for that. I'm worried about that. What I can say is CRA can do very, very minimal and flexible repayment plans based on the ability of individuals to pay. Small comfort, I hear myself saying that, but and that this is not a requirement to pay at this time. CRA is not requiring people repay at this time.
Okay, well, thank you, Minister. I'd like now to, Chair, again, through you, to speak to the Minister with regard to Bill C7, which was just passed in the past hour in the House and sent to the Senate. Does the Minister agree with the Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader who says that amendments in the Senate to better protect the disabled and the most vulnerable Canadians would be unacceptable?
Point of order, Chair.
That the Minister said would be worthy of consideration when she testified in the Senate.
Mr. Kent. Just a second. Mr. Long, go ahead.
Chair, I question the relevancy of the question.
The Minister is responsible for the status of persons with disabilities. C7 clearly touches on that, and she wandered into the fall economic statement, which is outside the scope of the supplementary estimate. So I'm going to allow the question. Go ahead, Mr. Kent.
Well, thank you. I'd just like to come back and again to ask whether the Minister agrees with the Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader who says that amendments in the Senate to better protect the disabled and most vulnerable Canadians would be unacceptable. Amendments that the Minister said in testimony in the House a couple of weeks ago would be worthy of consideration.
Well, thank you. And as I have said, I probably in front of this committee, well, maybe not, but in any event, I'm very open to making any piece of legislation that I'm involved with better. I've probably said that statement 8 times in my last appearance in front of the Senate. I am open to hearing content of proposed amendments. We then take it and analyze them as a government. I'd rather not comment on positions of my colleagues, but my position is openness to consider anything that might make a law better.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Thank you, Minister. Next, we're going to go to Ms. Young, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for appearing before our committee once again. It's a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you before the holidays. It's been quite a year, to say the least, and these main supplementary estimates are a real testament to how busy this year has been. And you mentioned the program CERB, Canada Emergency Student Benefit, the one-time payment for persons with disabilities, the Canada Recovery Benefits. They're massive programs that were put together in record time. How do the size and scope of these undertakings reflect on the public service as a whole?
Mai, thanks for the question. It's nice to hear your voice as well. I think the effort and the work that the public service has done these past months has really shown, and they've certainly lived up to their reputation of being world class during this pandemic. You know, we've asked a lot of the public service during this crisis, and they've really delivered for us. We asked them to do new programs, as you said, and they did it. We asked them to do this from their kitchen tables, and they did it. We asked them to do this while their kids were at home and they were juggling the extra demands of childcare and worries around COVID, and they did it. And really, it's been incredible. These were massive public policy programs and new programs. And you know, early on in ESDC, for example, we did a stock take of all of our resources, what we had at our disposal, and we went into the pandemic response being very well of our limitations and being very committed not to fail, and they didn't. I'm just super grateful for their hard work and really believe that Canadians have benefited. The unsung heroes of this entire effort is our public servant.
Well, thank you for that. I think it needed to be said, and I appreciate that you have given them a pat on the back, that It doesn't come very often, so thank you for that. Now, you and I have had a number of conversations about how our government supports people with disabilities, and I was very proud to be a part of the Canada Accessibility Law that came into force, I guess, just over a year ago. We have made great strides for people with disabilities, but I know we can do more. What do you hope to accomplish for people with disabilities as we find our way out of this pandemic?
Thank you again for the question. We had the Accessible Canada Act as our foundation, again, as we built our pandemic response, and we were committed to being disability inclusive from the beginning. But quite frankly, the pandemic has really exacerbated already existing inequalities in our systems. And, people with disabilities have faced unique and heightened challenge. Our systems have been stretched and some of them have broken. And for me and for our government, that meant responding very clearly in the speech from the throne by committing to Canada's first ever disability inclusion plan, which will include a new Canadian disability benefit modeled after the GIS for seniors, which will include a robust employment strategy for persons with disabilities, and which will include a modern approach to disability inclusion within the Government of Canada, which again will be a legacy piece moving forward. Thank you for the question.
Mr. Chair, do I have time for one more?
You do. You still have 2 minutes.
Oh, good. I did, in your speech to begin this committee, you mentioned the pilot program for marginalized women, and you said that it was going to be a game changer. What will make it so special?
Well, again, taking a broader, inclusive approach to our programs, we recognize that we have to take broad measures that will be targeting all workers, for example. But we had employment programs for Indigenous individuals, for persons with disabilities, and we had a women's entrepreneurship initiative, but not really a project targeting women and the barriers they face to get into the workforce. So this is exactly what this does. So providing tailored supports for women, whatever that looks like, and piloting it and trying to figure out the best ways we can help remove those barriers, help provide those wraparound supports, really working from the perspective of the worker who is a woman at the center. And I just think that we've never done this before, and it was time to do it.
Are you worried about a she session, something that?
Well, yeah. I don't even think that's up for discussion anymore. This pandemic has, again, I've said this before, I apologize, but it's sidelined our women and it has frontlined our women. We have women, being the hardest hit by the economic side of this and being at the forefront of our public health response at the same time. So absolutely, we absolutely risk losing a lot of the gains we've made in the women's movement if we don't very strategically target and support women to recover from this pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Suite, Madame Chabot.
Madame Chabot, 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, Minister. Thank you for being available here this evening. I'm going to try to go fairly quickly. As you said, you have a great concern for persons with disabilities and also for women and their access to the labor market. You won't be surprised by my question. I asked it in the House. We are concerned as well with respect, and certainly we are very proud of the quality of service that is provided by the public service. But there are many people who are seeking employment insurance who are waiting. Very many of them are women. They have to wait, and they may well have to wait for compensation for maternity leave or parental leave. Some have had to wait 6 months, weeks, if not months. they have no income. Can you guarantee that a few days, a few hours before Christmas, those guidelines that weren't there will be there to settle all these difficult cases?
Well, thank you for the question, and I know our offices have been working very closely together on the issue. The specific issue I think you're referring to is when individuals transition from the Quebec Parental Insurance Program to EI and the delay that people have been experiencing. We know this is unacceptable. I'm pleased that many of the files with people in these circumstances have been resolved. We believe we're at the point now where we've streamlined the process. The reality is we have to independently verify manually. This is not an automated process, both that the individual has not been, hasn't receiving two types of benefits at the same time, that the individual hasn't exceeded the 50 weeks total that they're entitled to, as well as the interplay, if any, between having received CERB. Not that that would impact their entitlement to weeks of benefits, but of course that you can't be receiving benefits at the same time. So all that in the mix means that it is taking longer for people to get their benefits. That's unacceptable. I think we're there, Madame Chabot, but I'm sorry it's taken us so long.
Some cases, yes, have been settled, and thank you for that. But there are hundreds that are left unsettled, and I don't know if they've all been brought to your attention. In any case, it's the same problem. They should have an answer, so I ask you to be vigilant. I do have another concern that deals with employment insurance. The Employment Insurance Fund, with respect to the Auditor General's statement today that indicated the deficit of that fund that could become $52 billion. That high. Do you think that the system can support that? Will there be another accounting approach? Because it seems that the majority of these, this came from not the regular fund, but from an emergency funding. What do you say about this?
Thank you for the question. I'll quickly answer the first part. Say absolutely, I am watching these files very personally and committed to get these all resolved as quickly as possible. I'm going to ask either Mark or Graham to answer the EI account question because their answer will be much more succinct than mine.
I could take that one. So for the EI account, so initially what was happening is charges related to the EI emergency response benefit were coming out of the EI account just because of the way our systems were laid out. But there was an announcement made by the government to reimburse the EI account for the impacts of the EI ERB. So it will be held harmless. So any amounts that were used for that particular purpose will be reimbursed.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Madam Minister, a last question. Are you presently working on putting in place an overhaul of the employment insurance regime?
We are absolutely looking to modernize and improve the employment insurance program for sure.
You've got 30 seconds left, Madame Chabot. You can ask a short question. I didn't understand, Mr. Chair. You have enough time to ask a short question. A short question? Okay. Summer Jobs Canada, we saw in the economic statement, the fall statement, that there would be changes that you seem to want to see happen. To the place that existed under COVID. Is that the case? And if it is the case, will it apply to this year?
Very quickly, the fall economic statement committed to 120,000 Canada Summer jobs next year. There will be flexibility put into this program, similar to the ones that were in place with COVID, but I believe responsive to the feedback we got from MPs about how we manage the program this year. Listen, this year, I mean, it was really tough because we did the call, we had employers express interest, and then the pandemic hit. Then we had to change the program, and it was a lot of work and confusion. It won't be that way this year. I apologize, Mr. Chair. I'm getting a ton of feedback in my ear. I'm hearing myself 3 times.
Okay, can we perhaps
J'ai le même problème.
Okay,
I have the same problem.
can take a short break to try and get that resolved, Minister, because it's important that you have good sound quality.
I don't need to hear myself that many times.
Yeah, but it's distracting, I know. So if Mr. Clerk, I'm not sure if we can get someone from IT or if there's some quick resolution of this before we resume, that would be ideal.
I'll look into it, Mr. Chair.
Minister's having feedback issues. She can hear herself. She said 3 times.
Next, Ms. Gazan, please, for 6 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair, and I'd like to welcome the Minister here today. Minister, people who were struggling to make ends meet applied for the CERB in good faith. Now your government is going after people who are barely surviving the pandemic. Yet your government isn't going after big corporations that received massive dividends to rich shareholders. This is problematic, particularly in ridings experiencing severe poverty, including mine, which currently has an outbreak of trench fever, something that hasn't been seen for 100 years. Many people who got the CERB, for example, because of or decided to take the CERB because of higher costs, for example, keeping their kids home from school, food costs, bill costs, and even being able to get their kids, for example, technology so that they could participate in school. So I wanted to ask you today, Minister, is your government willing to provide CERB repayment amnesty for low-income Canadians who claim the CERB, including youth who have aged out of care during the pandemic?
Thank you for the question. I'm heartbroken when I hear stories like the ones you're sharing, and they're certainly not unique. It's happening across the country. We put in place the CERB to help people who experienced job loss because of COVID, for COVID reasons, and we've been committed since the beginning to, in the case where in good faith people access the CERB and they weren't eligible to do so, to work with them to repay it, because we had to have some integrity measures. We consciously chose to put them at the back end of the program to get money out to people quickly. We are now in that difficult period of running through the eligibility criteria and determining who was actually eligible for this benefit. I remain as committed as ever to working with citizens, in a dignified way on repayment plans. We are not currently contemplating an amnesty, but we are looking to find ways to minimize the impact.
So just to let you know, Minister, like I don't doubt that you have heartbreak, but in Manitoba, for example, people who were on income assistance who accepted the CERB now are being cut off income insurance or income assistance.
Yeah.
Completely. And are no longer receiving a benefit. So regardless how badly we feel, this is going to result in families, certainly in my riding, that's really impacted by the government's current action, ending up on the streets, families that I've had to now assist in my office. So I would hope that your government would consider amnesty. I think it's unacceptable, certainly in Canada, that families, including children, could end up on the streets, particularly during a pandemic. So I have another question, and again, I don't question your sincerity in that, but I'm letting you know.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
That we have to do more than that. This is a human rights matter. So during the debate of C7, there's been a very clear message coming from the disability community that the human right to live in dignity is denied. And we know that, for example, 70% of adults with severe intellectual cognitive delays, individuals who might not even be able to work, live in abhorrent levels of poverty. My question is, will your government uphold its legal obligations and respect the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, something that we are obliged to do in terms of our international legal obligations, and ensure disabled persons have everything they need to live in dignity, things like a guaranteed livable basic income, affordable, accessible social housing, all other supports required to live in dignity? Or will this government continue to break the rule of law by not upholding the convention going forward? And I ask that because I was really disappointed today, particularly in light of Bill C7, that there was members of the Liberal Party and Conservative Party that boasted about dignity voted against this. So is your government open to exploring that?
Yes, well, the short answer, I apologize, I thought you were done. Yes, the short answer is yes. We built in recognition of our obligations under the UN CRPD right into the preamble of C7 because we understand the relationship of equality rights to the access to social, mental health, disability, community support services, because we can't fully realize those rights and have the choice that is afforded through those rights if we don't have access to these services. That's why we're putting in place the Canada Disability Benefit. That's why we're going to work to have a more modern, I'd say dignified approach to disability within the federal government. Absolutely.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Gazan.
Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we're going to go to Ms. Falk, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being at our committee today. I want to follow up with MP Kent's concerns that he had regarding repayment of benefits. So I've had a number of constituents, which it seems like across the country, this is a trend that have reached out to me and specifically regarding the letter that they received from the CRA stating, so these letters state that they have until December 31st to repay the CERB that they've collected, or they will be taxed in the next year. So, these constituents applied at the direction of Service Canada, but now have been told that they were ineligible because the income threshold was based on net income and not gross income. One constituent, and this is a little concerning for me, was even told by a Service Canada agent that the government wanted to get money in the hands of people as quickly as possible, and that the rules were developed later. So, and I'm sure that you would agree that these individuals, I would say most of them applied in good faith. according to the information provided to them. But now they're facing hardship at Christmas time. And when these constituents do call in to try to attempt to make flexible arrangements, they're on hold endlessly. And in some cases, they're actually disconnected altogether. So they've waited for hours and then are disconnected. So I'm just wondering, Minister, what steps you are taking to ensure that these Canadians who received misinformation about CERB are not facing undue hardship this Christmas?
Well, thank you for the follow-up. There's a lot in your question. Let me try and answer. You know, I can assure you that the rules were not made up after release the program. We thought about this from the beginning. I feel like, as I said, my messaging has been clear on this. Regardless, we're where we are, and it's really unfortunate that people are in the position they're in, and we're trying to find a way to work with people to who aren't eligible. We had to have some eligibility thresholds. Graham can give you more detail of how we came up with the 5,000, but that was the level we determined of income that would show some
but the
some
Service
connection
Canada
to the labor
messaging,
force.
the Service Canada messaging, and I would even argue too, as being a member of Parliament, when Service Canada closed its locations, and all of a sudden our offices and our staffs were doing that because everything was overloaded. I understand we were in crisis and all of that, but even I would say the information that our offices were receiving weren't necessarily accurate. So I think there's just this disconnect there. But I guess, you know, we're gonna have to move forward. I mean,
Yeah.
March is in March, and hopefully 2021 will be better. I'm interested to know, you know, how you are working with the Minister of National Revenue to ensure that there are enough agents to help Canadians in a timely fashion who are calling in for payment flexibility, because it's not okay for somebody to wait on hold hours upon hours and then be disconnected or not end up talking to anybody at all.
And thank you for that segue. That was going to be my next point, is that the Minister of National Revenue and I, we're speaking regularly about this as recently as this morning, to make sure both Service Canada and the CRA has the human resource capacity to answer questions. I think specifically the reality is, if someone got the CERB, they're going to get a tax slip that says that they earned a certain amount of income. That income is going to be taxed. And we're trying to have our tax slips be as accurate as possible for people going into the 2020 tax season, so that the receipt of CERB doesn't negatively impact people's entitlement to other benefits like the GST credit or the CCB or the GIS, because that would be a double whammy, if you will, if people are then deemed not eligible for the GST or GIS next year, because of them having collected CERB that they're ultimately going to have to pay back potentially. They then get neither and they have to reapply. It's a very complicated tax reality, and proactively we're trying to get as many tax slips as accurate as possible by the end of December to avoid that for as many people as possible.
So I'm just wondering if you could tell me what you and the Minister of National Revenue are doing to ensure, you said you're in communication, what are the plans to make sure there's enough Service Canada agents so we don't have extra added stress at a very difficult time when people are alone and depressed and whatnot?
Graham, can you give us the Service Canada uptake numbers on just how many people are now responding on Service Canada?
And if you could briefly, Mr. Flack, please.
So on the repayment side, none on the Service Canada side yet, because it's CRA that is doing this for the CERB on the collection side. So this is only on the CRA side for now. But yes, eventually Service Canada will get to this too. But right now, the letters that have gone out are for people who collected the CERB, which was delivered through CRA. And it's their centers that are dealing with this right now.
But we definitely have increased our capacity just of Service Canada personnel to answer people who called. Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Knowing the EI surge we were going to get with the year's worth of work in September, we doubled the call center capacity in terms of number of agents over a course of 4 months.
Thank you, Mr. Flack and Minister, Ms. Falk. Next, Mr. Dong, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, thank you very much for being with us today. Before I begin my questions, I think it's important to get on record that on behalf of the people of Don Valley North, I want to say a sincere thank you for your good and hard work this year. It's been a very tough year. I know that the majority of the public service are still working from home. Things are not back to normal yet. And also there are a lot of decisions need to be made given a very short period of time. And also people often forget that we are operating as a minority government, so we need to work with all parties across. So it's not easy. So I just want to make sure that you hear this. Your leadership and your compassion and hard work from the public service is felt, and in fact is making Canada one of the top performing countries in responding to COVID in the world. So I just want to make sure that that appreciation is on record and it's passed on behalf of my constituents. I saw that I have particular interest after I see this. There were $12.65 million in payments for personal support workers training and measures to address labor shortage and long-term and home care. And I heard that something that we are going to do in the future along that line in the fall economic statement as well. Can you tell the committee, give us more information on this initiative?
Well, thank you. We all know how the pandemic has really highlighted the need for additional workers in long-term care facilities, assisted living services. There really are actually workforce challenges in the supportive care sector, and that's what this is all about. So this funding is to create a program, and it will be ultimately working with the Colleges and Institutes Canada to develop and implement an accelerated online training program for approximately 4,000 new personal support workers, which will have an online component, a work integrated learning component. It'll be offered at no cost to the trainees. And this is really la relève. This is really the next wave of workers into this system. And we're hoping to professionalize, which we expect to lead to higher wages. We're hoping that these individuals will pursue careers post-pandemic in this field and increase the capacity. And it'll really make consistent the training across the country for personal support workers. I'm very excited about this one. This is really good news for Canada.
And one more detail on this, is the program only available to Canadian citizens and permanent residents? I mean, is it available, can anyone with a valid work permit or study permit within their allowable hours apply for this program as well?
I apologize, I honestly don't know. Graham?
I don't have that design detail, Minister, but we will get it.
We can find out and follow up for sure. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, that's all good. I know it's maybe a bit of curveball, but we've seen a lot of foreign international students and work permit holders step forward during the pandemic and help out their local health facilities. So yeah,
thank you.
I'd be interested
I will follow up.
Information. Change gear a bit. I want to ask about the Canada Summer Jobs Program and the Youth Employment Strategy. We all know how important it is to our ridings and not-for-profits and business in our ridings. These programs are. So can you give us a bit more information on these two programs?
Well, thank you. Wow, a lot to say about these two programs as well. It's, over the last month, we've seen how hard hit young people have been by the pandemic. And quite frankly, there's a real risk that if we don't take significant action that this will like generationally impact our young people. We still have higher youth employment rates than average. We have reduced participation in post-secondary among lower income students. We've seen how it's the pandemic has disproportionately affected our students who face systemic barriers, including Indigenous youth and youth with disabilities. That's why we put in place our COVID student response package, which I'm proud to say, the emergency student benefit was supported over 700,000 students, and the Canada Student Loan Program helped more than 2 million students. We did about 150,000 job placements through our enhanced measures, and that's what we're continuing. So the Youth Employment and Skills Strategy focuses on students who face additional barriers to participation in the workforce and provides them with supports. And we are torquing that up. Canada Summer Jobs, of course, everybody here is familiar with that program. We see how every year it's oversubscribed. We think there's a need to even have more summer jobs available next year, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we're with these two programs supporting both students who are job ready looking for work through Canada Summer Jobs and students who need a little more help, who are more marginalized, face more barriers, by supporting them with wraparound supports to succeed in work.
Definitely there's a need for it.
Mr. Dong.
Thank you.
Suite, Madame Chabot.
Madame Chabot, 2.5 minutes. Thank you. Madam Minister, I want to ask you a question about the tax credit for people with disabilities. It is non-refundable. Have you thought about the possibility of making that tax credit for persons with disabilities refundable?
You are asking the question that I am asked most and have been asked most over the past 5 years by advocates and individuals with disabilities. Because the reality is what's happened over time is Government of Canada disability policy has been driven through tax policy, and the DTC has really become a gatekeeper for a number of important federal government programs. But because it's non-refundable, low-income or no-income citizens with disabilities don't apply for it because there's no benefit from a tax point of view. Therefore, they don't have access to these really important other programs for which this is a gatekeeper. We're going to change all of that. Part of our commitment in our disability inclusion plan is to modernize our approach and reconceive our eligibility requirement for these programs so the DTC doesn't perform that gatekeeping function. As we do that overhaul, we're going to look at the DTC itself and see what we need to do to modernize the tax elements of our disability delivery mechanisms as well. I don't have a strict yes or no to that answer. It's a bit premature, but it is very, very much for discussion as we work on this modernization effort.
Merci. Thank you. You know, at the Finance Committee, the question is being asked as well. I know that there are difficulties in terms of tax equity and so on, but it should be met for persons with disabilities. For Employment Equity Canada, I could suggest a problem that still exists. In our ridings, we have problems. As far as the envelope is concerned for employment equity is concerned, it reverts to the minimum of the previous year. The result is that there is less money if you have a minimum salary, and there is less there to finance projects to help. Could you not see that it would be possible to have the envelopes indexed to the year in which the projects are current, not to the previous year?
That would be greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you. I'll ask Mark to talk about how money's rolled over from one year to another quickly. Sorry, Mark.
So when it comes to operating budgets, we're able to roll over up to 5% of our consolidated revenue fund budgets that has not been spent, or up to 40 million total of our employment insurance budget.
Thank you.
Merci, Madame Chabot.
Thank you, Ms. Chabot.
On, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So CCPA Manitoba just came out with a study that said if you want to reduce COVID rates, address poverty, in this case it was Manitoba, but we know there's a direct correlation between rates of poverty and rates of COVID, primarily targeted towards BIPOC communities who often live at higher rates of poverty, as you're well aware of.
Yep.
I was really disappointed that the Prime Minister came out recently as saying that a guaranteed livable income is not a priority at this time. Even though we know that most Canadians are supportive of the idea of a guaranteed livable basic income and all, and we know that, you know, and I think it's a very modest estimate that 3.5 million Canadians currently live below the poverty line. And I've shared in the House today, in the last 2 months, 4 people living in shelters in Winnipeg have contracted trench fever, a rare preventable disease of poverty often seen is in refugee camps. This made international news. This is abhorrent. So again, I asked you the last time, you know, particularly with the kind of money we spent on, for example, TMX, I think it's what, $17 billion. Is your government open, and are you open to supporting a guaranteed livable basic income so that the millions of people that live below the poverty line, including many people in the disabled community, can live with dignity and human rights?
Well, thank you for the question. It's a really important conversation that we need to have about how we ensure there is no reason why any Canadian should live in poverty. I can assure you that when we look at targeted income supports like the Canada Disability Benefit, reducing poverty levels is one of the primary goals for doing that. By targeting them to specific individuals and their specific lived realities, we are getting at we are able to better tailor the supports to that group of individuals. You know, we have the CCB, which targets families. We have OAS and GIS, which targets seniors. By targeting working age Canadians with disabilities, you know, 19 to 64, again, the program parameters haven't been decided, but that's what's currently on my mind. We will be lifting a significant number of Canadians with disabilities out of poverty. I'd like to say I think it's a matter of a difference in approach, not a difference in desired outcome, where we are looking to target income supports at particular groups instead of a broad-based, one-size-fits-all approach that might not meet the needs of a specific group.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you.
Mr. Viss, please, for 5 minutes.
Well, this almost, thank you, Chair. Appreciate the time today. Minister Qualtrough, great to have you back at committee. Under the Employment Insurance Act, the government must set EI premium rates to generate just enough revenue to ensure that at the end of a 7-year period, EI revenues equal EI expenses. By law, every dollar paid out of EI must be recouped through EI premiums within 7 years. The government has not indicated in its fall economic statement or elsewhere whether it plans to address the projected shortfall of $52 billion through either higher premium rates, reduced benefits, or through payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Would you be able to answer that question today, or when can we expect the government's plan?
Well, I'll give it my best, and then Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we actually have confirmed to the Canada Employment Insurance Commission that we will be crediting the EI operating account for the costs related to the EI IRB, and that we will be reconciling this. Mark, can you, that's how I understand it, but can you please
through the Consolidated Revenue Fund?
Yeah, that's
okay,
my understanding. Mark?
Yes, and it's through the Consolidated Revenue Fund, and the amounts are already shown in these estimates. It makes part of the 88 billion that you see under the CERB statutory amount.
Okay.
Just the transaction has not taken place yet.
Okay, I would ask that you guys clarify that with the parliamentary budget officer, because they just said in their update this morning that that hasn't been done yet. So that would be that would be very useful for them. And Mr. Perlman, it's great to have you back again. And I'd like to pick up where we left off on Tuesday. You mentioned that ESDC has and I quote, a very elaborate evaluation organization. The evaluation direct, as I think it's evaluation directorate, which it's formally called. First question, and I'm just going to read up a couple and let you respond. Have you found an example to share with the committee of where a division of ESDC is underperforming? And I mention that because I reviewed the 2018, 2019, and 2022-23 departmental evaluation plans, and they were really, really hard to follow. And I say that because back in 2017, the evaluation directorate committed to modernizing its communication approach to increase awareness and use of evaluation findings, kind of along my questioning in our last meeting. So could you provide some concrete examples as well of how ESDC has implemented this approach from 2017, and how are the findings of the evaluation directorate presented? What metrics are used? Thank you, sir.
Mark, I can take that at the front end. So the evaluation directorate, indeed, we publish all of our evaluations. As you will see in the evaluations, each of them has a management action plan associated with it. We evaluate not only our own programs and how they perform internally, but also our programs that externally are facing. So for example, the Pathways to Education program that Minister Flaherty launched years ago, we do external evaluations of those as well. So there's adjustments across the board. I mean, I think the list would be virtually everything that's evaluated. There's something we take away from it where we improve performance coming out of the evaluation.
Mm-hmm. And then on the second part about following up from the committed to modernizing its communication commitment in 2017, can you outline any specific steps that were taken? We publish all evaluations, and we've attempted in the evaluations, but you'll be the judge of this, to make them more understandable, not just for our own managers, but in the case of many of these evaluations, they're quite groundbreaking in assessing the effectiveness of programs for parliamentarians. So I encourage feedback on that if you don't think that they're doing that, particularly for those externally facing programs, because that's our aim. Thank you, Mr. Flack, and I will be following up with the committee in respect to that and the questions I had regarding telephone services operated by the department. I have one final quick question for the minister. I had a constituent come up to me recently who had a tragic accident. They're disabled, and they were an able-bodied person their entire life, and they're faced with this brand new reality. And it's been a really challenging, obviously a really challenging transition for them since their incident. And he was wondering whether you could provide recommendations, and I actually sent you a letter about this, but because I have you at committee and I respect you, I wanted to ask it directly. Where would an individual go if they wanted to participate on any federal advisory board related to disability issues?
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm kind of rubbing my hands together. We're always looking for people to contribute. I'll put some specific options in a response to you, and I will. It might depend on the nature of his disability. If we can get him to come up through a specific disability group, if one of my team can meet with him and pick his brain on whatever it is he would like to contribute. Honestly, we like to hear from as many people as possible, and absolutely, we'll follow up with you on that.
Thank you, and I would be happy to facilitate that, because when he went to the department website, he says he couldn't find out where he could go to make a difference, because he's a person with a lot of resources, but he wants to help others that don't have those resources. So thank you for that commitment, Minister.
I'll reach out for sure.
And have a Merry
Absolutely.
Christmas.
You as well.
Thank you, Mr. Viss. Thank you, Minister. The last MP to pose questions of you this evening, Minister, is Mr. Vaughan for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, good evening, depending which part of the country. And Minister, just a couple of quick questions about the letter that went out from CRA, and saying that, just want to confirm it wasn't your department that wrote the letter.
No, sir.
And
but I am responsible for CERB, so
No, absolutely.
That's on me.
All of us, even when we get our tax refunds, if we get them, when we get that brown letter with the window pane envelope from Revenue Agency, our heart always sort of skips a bit of a beat, and there's good reason for that. Often, the language is stern, but the possibility for accommodation is always there. And a couple of things that I want to highlight and just get your thoughts on. One, this is really about trying to get Canadians to rectify their tax situation to make sure they qualify for CERB so they don't have to repay anything. And the advice that's being given by CRA is to do that by December 31st so that you have even fewer problems downstream qualifying. Is that not the intent of the letter from your understanding?
Absolutely. If you haven't file your 2019 taxes, if you can show us proof of sufficient income in the past 12 months, show us. Then if you can't and you need to repay, try if you can so that your tax slip will have a lower number on it so that you might be eligible for benefits and credits next year. Absolutely. It was really a proactive outreach.
And while the records that are incomplete may be because you haven't filed taxes for 2 years ago, the capacity to revise and refile your taxes, especially when it comes to independent income earners, there are expenses that sometimes can be carried over year to year that may allow you to qualify. So one of the pieces of advice, which isn't in the letter but should be distributed by NPs, is to take a look at those options in terms of some of the flexibility sort of gig economy or self-employed workers enjoy. In other words, if you file now, you can always revise later if new information becomes available or new tax law is applicable.
You're absolutely right, and particularly the 12-month aspect to it. You're not wed to just your 2019 tax year. You have the ability to look at the income you received from January to March or April, and Graham can clarify this, of this year, which gives you flexibility in terms of your income amounts. And Graham, would you add anything?
No,
Yeah,
but I think that's actually enough, because we have compressed time here. But I think that part of the communication strategy going forward, because of the anxiety you're hearing expressed by MPs from their constituents, is to make that pathway a little wider, a little clearer, and a little bit more obvious to people so that they don't feel like the Grinch is showing up when, in fact, we want to maintain much closer to Santa Claus on this one than acting like the Grinch.
Message received. Thank you. I hear you.
I want to also explore the area as we move towards stronger disabilities income supports and support for people with disabilities. This notion that one of the challenges we had this year is that there is actually no federal database of people with disabilities, and that was one of the hurdles we had to clear to get dollars out the door. But it's also because of the, as you described, the gatekeeping component of the way the tax credits were designed. We're not getting a full view of people with disabilities. Is that one of the issues that needs to be corrected as we move to stronger income supports?
That is the issue. That's the fundamental underlying issue. We got the one-time payment out to 1.7 million Canadians, and 22% of our population identifies as having a disability. So we absolutely need to look at that and find a way to connect directly with our citizens with disabilities, both so that we can help support them directly, but also so that we can test our programs and get some lived experience feedback in a meaningful way for everything we do around disability. But yes, that's the issue. That's the big nut we have to crack.
And in terms of our approach to income supports, the provincial governments provide the sort of the basic support with social assistance, and we support that with their federal transfers for social supports in that regard. But what we're trying to do is create a basket of income supports that effectively, if you look at them together as a system, you could call it a form of basic income. But the challenge is that each program has a separate design strategy, and that's what creates the gaps that prevent us from calling it basic income. Would it be fair to say then that the government is looking at how to knit those together so that we stop creating cracks that people fall between, and that's the movement towards basic income, even though it's not branded?
It would be more than fair to say that. That's what we have to do. We have to kind of harmonize our income supports, as I said, for these kind of targeted groups of individual. And we also have to work with the provinces because, you know, they are responsible for disability supports in one way, but if we provide a federal top-up, if you will, and then that's clawed back because of provincial rules, it's not helping the individual. So there's a really important conversation, like we had with the CCB, with the provinces, and we did, and we managed to move through that, around seeing whatever we do around a disability benefit as an additional amount to be received by Canadians with disabilities, not a instead of amount, and not something that can offset their expenses, but really to allow individuals to have a life to live in dignity, I guess how I would say it right now, as we all talk about C7.
And that's why we can't move unilaterally.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Vaughn. That's our time. Minister, thank you so much for being with us. I do hope you get a chance to put your feet up. You've certainly been front and center with the measures that have been taken to support Canadians through the pandemic. We appreciate you being here at committee, and we appreciate the work that you're doing in service of your country. So
well,
thank you so much, and have a
don't
wonderful
tell
holiday.
the other committees, but you are my favorite committee. I really enjoy engaging with you all. It's because these topics all matter so much to all of us, and I can tell by your questions. So thank you.
They do indeed.
And no offense to finance when I say that, but it's the truth. Thank you all. Happy holidays.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, we're going to suspend for about 3 minutes. We do have 2 additional officials that are going to connect, and in about 3 minutes, we'll get a chance to pose questions of them. So we are suspended. addition to the outstanding public officials that were introduced at the top of the meeting, we are joined by Cliff Growan, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Benefits and Integrated Services Branch with Service Canada, and Alicia Ram, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Skills and Employment Branch. Welcome back to the committee, gentlemen. You know the drill. We'll dispense with the preliminaries and get right to questions, starting with Ms. Falk, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. And it's nice to see the regulars back again at committee. I feel like it hasn't been very long since I've seen all of you, so welcome back. I know, and I think we all know that long-term care facilities have been the epicenter for COVID outbreaks and unfortunately fatalities as well. And we do know that residents have faced the harshest restrictions, and healthcare workers who care for them are definitely experiencing a burnout, right? This is a long time asking them to work so diligently. And I think we all do know that there was a sector-wide staffing crisis that pre-existed this pandemic, but the pandemic has exacerbated that and made us notice how urgent that staffing crisis is. So I do know in the supplementary estimates, there's $12.5 million in funds that are allocated for personal support workers, training and measures to address labor shortages in long-term care and home care. So I'm just wondering if this specific line item is part of the PSW announcement that was in the fall economic statement.
This predates that. So this is 12.5 million that was set aside specifically for the program the minister described. That's providing online training for 4,000 support workers, as well as work placements where we pay for the work placements around it. So it predates the FES.
Sorry, clarification. Pays for the training or pays for the placement, or both?
Both.
Okay, so what is that 12.5 million, or in the economic statement, what is the difference then there?
Mark? I think the economic statement may have referenced that. I just don't have the text in front of me, but the 12.5 million that we had has been planned and in the estimates that hence it's in Subsp for a while. So I just have to check the FES on whether it just re-mentioned that, but I just don't have that in front of me. Benoit, do you happen to know that? Benoit, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Mr. Robidoux.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's the same measure that has been restated in FES about the funding this program to form 4,000 new personal support workers interns. So it's the same measure, and the total is going to go to CCAN is 23.2, and the amount that is mentioned is two places. One is GSNCs, one is operations. So I think it's explained a bit the difference, but it's the same measure.
Okay, thank you. In my conversations that I have had with the Canadian Support Worker Association, they indicated that they were not consulted with the announcement that happened in the fall economic statement. So I think that's very unfortunate if that is the case, because these are people who work the front lines. They have lived experience, worked experience, and could probably add very, very valuable advice to any program that is being created. So I guess I'm just wondering, was this program informed by consultations at all?
Yes, and I can give you the context, and that's why I'm sort of trying to date the program to when we developed it, which was deeper into the crisis. So our role obviously is on the training side. That's where we can add value as a department. So what we were asked to look at is, where are the capacities in the post-secondary and training institutions? How much could they take to do short-term training that would address these needs? And that's the basis of the proposal, was consultations with Universities and Colleges Canada to determine what we thought was to be the maximum we would be able to do in that short period. But this was months ago that we had done that.
There was also a concern that has been in conversations with these groups about a decline in the quality of care that could be a result of compressed, quick training. Is this a concern that the department is aware of, and what measures will be built into the funding to ensure that quality care is not lessened as a result? That we get the quality, not just the quantity.
Yeah, so the way the course is structured, and it was structured on the assumption that we could not initially have people in classrooms, so that's the online component. But to pair it with that, to get at the quality issue, is the placement is like an internship where people are supervised to determine they're not on their own in the placement. They are supervised on the job. So
by somebody, but by somebody else, or a worker
Yes.
who's already over. Okay.
I believe by a worker who's already there.
So
again,
it's a worker that's going to have an additional workload of caring for the people, but also teaching somebody in the middle of the crisis.
the limitation, yeah.
I like, if you don't mind providing me all the groups that were consulted. It's consulting just the universities and not the frontline workers. There might be a gap. I hope that's not the case, but I'm just hoping that we have the quality of care that comes out of these students.
I'm happy to get back to you with more details, but yes, quality was very much in mind, which is why there's both a practical component and a theoretical component.
Thank you, Ms. Falk, and thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Flack. Next, Mr. Long, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening to all of my colleagues. And first and foremost, I just want to say to Mr. Flack, Mr. Robideau, on behalf of certainly my riding of St. John Ross, the constituents here, and all Canadians, thank you so much for the work you and your department have done over the past, really 7 to 10 months. The work you've done for Canadians just has been incredible, and you stepped up when you needed to, and certainly I know Canadians know that. For me, in my riding, certainly one of the greatest privileges and top priorities I've always had over the past 5 years was to work with and advocate for rights of Canadians with disabilities. And as certainly my friend and colleague MP Young referenced earlier, it was a privilege to be able to work in this committee in the last Parliament on our government's groundbreaking Accessible Canada Act, C81, with some of my colleagues who are still here today, including MP Young and MP Falk. So on this Human Rights Day, I would like to focus my questions to you on what our government is doing through investments contained in the estimates to help ensure the rights of Canadians with disabilities are upheld, particularly throughout the pandemic. So the supplementary estimates B 2020-2021 allocate $848.6 million towards the one-time payment to persons with disabilities, pursuant to an act respecting, further COVID-19 measures. During its study on Canada's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the committee heard about the difficulties faced, and I know all MPs did, faced with persons with disabilities during this public health crisis. So how many people is this measure expected to assist? I think you're on mute, Mr. Flack, sorry.
First, if I could just thank you for the appreciation you showed to the wonderful employees at our department who've I really think done a terrific job. And if I could express my disappointment at the fact that this will be the first year in my life I will not be home in the Maritimes for Christmas. So please take care of it for me. So the estimates are that 1.7 million Canadians will benefit from the disability payment. 1.6 million were paid within the first short period of weeks after we put this brand new benefit on a brand new platform up in, I think, under 18 weeks. But there are additional windows where people can apply because we have given people until the end of December to qualify for the DTC, which is one of the routes they can do to qualify for the benefit. So people were automatically enrolled and put in the payment. They didn't have to apply, but we've given people until the end of the year to apply to the DCC. And then for those that come in after, we will make additional payments in, I think it's February and March, Mark, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, thanks for that. And just for clarity, you said how many? 1.7 million?
1.7 million are our estimates. 1.6 million have been paid already, as I understand it.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What was the rationale for making the one-time contribution rather than an ongoing payment for people with disabilities?
That's a policy question I tread lightly on. The decision at the time in the crisis was to try to compensate for expenses that individuals were suffering from incurring additional expenses or income loss that individuals had as a result of the crisis. As a result, all of the measures that we've been working through, the student supports, the senior supports, the recovery benefits themselves, and the disability benefits have been one-time or time-limited benefits associated with the crisis, on the theory that when we move out of the crisis, those incremental expenses or income losses will no longer be a factor. So that was the principle behind it, that we were focused on dealing with the effects of the crisis as opposed to using these measures to permanently restructure the system.
Okay, thanks for that. So look, we all live this, but you know, the one-time payment was announced during the summer, you know, obviously this summer, and eligible Canadians only began receiving the payment in October. And I know there was certainly a source, you know, I can certainly speak firsthand, it was a source of frustration. We were getting calls on a daily basis about, you know, where was that payment? How come we're last and how come it's so late? Can you give an explanation to the committee about the delays, like what happened there?
So we have no system to provide such a payment that was in existence. In fact, we had no system that linked together these various databases, including the Veterans Database, the CRA DTC database, and the payments through the CPPD or Quebec plan on which we had to get data in. We are very sorry it took as long as it took, but what I can tell you is in normal times, for us to construct a system from scratch as we had to do that could on an automated basis bring these together, we would have estimated that would have been at least 2 years to do in peacetime. And the team found ways to do that in, I think at the end of the day, it was 17 weeks. So I know 17 weeks was too long for people, but I think we will win awards for this in terms of record times for going from literally a computer system having to be built from scratch in an automated way to pull in and test and do this. It's quite miraculous, but I appreciate the minister has made clear she does not want to be in a position in the future where we have to build new systems to do this, that we should make the investments necessary to have these in place. But it really was, Cliff and others did miraculous work on this to get it done as quickly as was humanly possible.
Okay, thanks for that, Chair. How much time do I have?
None. Thank you. Sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Long, but Madame Chabot, s'il vous plaît, pour.
Madame Chabot, 6 minutes. We always try to bargain with you, Chair, in terms of time. Next year, we'll see what we can win. My question. I have several questions on EI. I asked a question earlier of the minister. I know that many emergency measures have been put in place with respect to employment insurance and all the new benefits and programs in terms of shifting things from one program to another. The question that I asked earlier of the minister, those programs are going to end in June. Is there any work being done now to look at how there can be an overhaul of the entire system? In 12 months, we're going to come back again to the terms of the old program. And it would be a difficulty if there were still problems with eligibility and other things. So are you looking at something to overhaul? Yes, as you indicated, Parliament is making changes to the Employment Insurance Act that it will go in September 2021. And these exceptional measures will be intended to go in that direction. As the minister indicated a few minutes ago, yes, we are working on reform more and the possibility of more permanent reforms as indicated in the government's statement. Well, do you have a time frame in mind, a calendar? Or is your base going to be the temporary measures to create new programs, the ones that you hope to announce? Nothing has been announced. Of course, it's for the political side of the government to decide what they want to announce. But I can tell you that Richard and Benoit and their teams are working extremely hard to be able to give options to the government. Thank you. My other question, probably you're aware of, Mr. Flack. It's the issue of the Employment and Social Security Tribunal. It was drawn to my attention in Quebec. There are many people that are quite concerned about the commitment that was made for this new tribunal. It seems to be falling behind. There was supposed to be a three-person tribunal, but now it seems that there are directives that are pushing it back, and that is of concern. Have you met with the unions as they asked you to do? Can we hope that we can get back to the initial project? I can say that one of my roles is to be the chair of that commission, the president, and one of the essential things that has been put forward by the government is, with respect to changing the tribunal system, is that there has to be amendments to the various laws, and now we. With respect to Quebec, and the fact that parliamentary time was very much restricted because of COVID. That caused delays. The government has not yet indicated publicly how this is going to occur, how this law will be modified, but it is certainly going to be referred to Parliament. While you're sending me some bad signals about what's happening here, I would invite you to reassure us because people are concerned. I think probably there is some room to clarify the matter. Now my next question deals with Summer Employment Canada. I want to know if it was a part of your intentions or if you've envisaged that when you set up a program, that the program should be indexed in terms of the minimum salary of the current year, not that of the preceding year. And the 1340 in Quebec exists, and that will allow to have a better budget to underpin the project. I can go refer to the team, but I have to say that it's not all provinces that have automatic indexation of a minimum salary. So when you want to launch the program, we have to ask for budgets from the Department of Finance. And the figures that we have is only the figures from the current year and not of the previous year. So if we had an automatic system, it would have been easier in terms of finance and budgets, but that's not the case. So I will just turn it over to the team to see if they can add to this, but I believe that is the problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Flack. Madame Chabot.
Ms. Gazan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. My first questions are for Mr. Falk. Thank you for being here today and to all the witnesses. During COVID, we've seen, I think, groups that often people didn't pay attention to prior, really coming to light in terms of the kinds of human rights violations that they live with consistently. And one group in particular that I have questions about today are temporary foreign workers. So I was wondering if you could let us know how many temporary foreign workers in Canada have contracted COVID-19 to date, and in which sectors they generally are working in.
As we came to speak to SUPSB, I don't have those figures with me, but I'd be happy to get back to the committee with those.
Okay, I do have a follow-up question.
I just point out, we actually don't get those figures directly. The Government of Canada's role in temporary foreign workers is to facilitate their entry. The actual outbreak numbers would be tracked by provincial health authorities, so we get them indirectly, but I'd be happy to track those down and get them to you.
Yeah, I asked that because I was wondering, how are the employers of temporary foreign workers currently being held accountable for not adequately protecting workers from contracting COVID-19? And I'm thinking very specifically about temporary foreign workers out in Ontario who were working in confined conditions, not conducive to health guidelines, ending up contracting COVID-19. Is there any sort of accountability that employers have to, or employers being held accountable for not providing conditions conducive of human rights?
Yeah, in fact, because a pandemic was not something that was fully contemplated in terms of the TFW regime, we had to develop in real time major changes to the program. That included some additional funding for employers to be able to put additional measures in place. But more directly to your point, it also included putting in place a new penalties regime specific to the type of things you're talking about, with much steeper fines for sanctions. But some of these things would not have been existing before, but they include among the things appropriate distancing, all of the pandemic-related measures for safety. But we have rolled that regime as well out in real time, and those sanctions are starting to be applied. We also had to move, though, and this was a real challenge, to a virtual inspection regime. We were not able, because of local health conditions and advice of local health authorities in the initial phases, to physically visit many of the sites. And the team adapted and developed virtual inspection tools where video cameras were used to follow as well.
Yeah, I asked that because I do have many people who are temporary foreign workers that certainly live in my riding. And I know some of the stories coming out of COVID-19 are pretty horrific. My next question has to do with, for you again, sorry, I have many questions for you today. Supplementary Estimates B 2020-21 allocated over $12.6 million towards personal support worker training and measures to address labor shortages in long-term and home care pursuant to the public health events of the National Concern Payments Act. And we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly shown us the importance of care work, as my colleague, Madame Falk, shared earlier. But part of the reason for this workforce shortage in home care, as you know, oftentimes is related to workers not being paid a living wage. And which we know during COVID, a living wage for people that are doing often dangerous work. Will these new measures include ways to ensure that care workers are paid a living wage and extra benefits in lieu of the fact that they are doing kind of life-saving but very dangerous work?
As you may be aware, the Government of Canada did, through the Safe Restart Agreement, transfer additional funds to the provinces to allow them to top up wages. But I would point out that under the Constitution, property and civil rights regulating this sector are the exclusive domain of provincial governments, and it would be unconstitutional for the Government of Canada to impose salary levels on the provincially regulated sector. We can only do that in the federally regulated sector.
Right, but you do have the power to put in place national standards. For example, we're talking about putting national standards in place for childcare, for example. Would that not also be true, being able to put national standards, work standards in place for frontline care workers, especially around safety, public health and safety?
So in any areas of exclusive provincial jurisdiction, there are limits to how far the federal government can go in setting standards. And the more specific the standards are, including something very specific like setting wage levels in provincially regulated jurisdictions, the more outside the federal scope it is. So I think it's a question of which standards you're talking about. But if the standard is an area of exclusive provincial jurisdiction, there are limits to how far it's gone. That's why the measures the government has put forward have been about providing resources to provinces, giving them flexibility in how to apply them. But for example, the federal government does not have, under the Constitution, the power to legislate wage levels in the provincially regulated sector, which would make up about 96% of the workforce in Canada.
Right,
Thank
but
you,
you
Ms.
do.
Kazan.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
You're
Thank you
at
very
time.
much.
Thank you, Mr. Flack. Next, Mr. Kent, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to come back, Mr. Flack, to the $848 million that were allocated for the one-time $600 disability payment for those who were certified with disabilities. And I'm just wondering, have all 1.7 million checks gone out digitally or otherwise to those who were certified?
Yes, so the initial run that was automatically generated by the system, because we didn't ask anyone to apply, but everyone who was in the DTC, everyone who already had a certificate in the system, everyone who was CPP, QPP in the system, and everyone who had a Veterans Affairs benefit, all that data was put into the system, and an initial payment went out immediately to 1.6 million.
1.6 million.
We are estimating there's another 100,000, but it could be more, that will come in as they get themselves certified. And we have extended the period in which they can certify till the end of December. And then we will issue in January and maybe even into March additional payments. But that's an estimate, and it's hard for us to know how many will.
Sure, and I understand,
almost immediately.
Given that the deadline, it's open until the end of December. And I was just wondering, that would seem to be a small percentage of additional certifications, given that there's more than 6 million adults in Canada who claim disability of one sort or another. And I know that the severity of the disability may determine acceptance or not, but would you expect there may well be a rush in these final weeks before the end of the month?
Well, I think Minister Qualtrough, if she was here, would say she would hope that there is a great number of people who come forward and rush to do that. What we've provided is merely an estimate, but obviously if there are additional people beyond that estimate that come forward and qualify, they would be entitled to the benefit. And there have been advocacy campaigns through disability organizations to encourage people to apply. So that's why I just wanted to underscore that it's merely an estimate. If more come in, then they will be entitled to the payment.
And would the statutory authorities cover that many more? Again, a hypothetical number?
Mark, I believe the answer is yes.
Yeah, hypothetically, the statutory authorities would cover that.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to go now to the $912 million that were contracted to the WE Real Estate Holding Foundation until the cancellation because of the WE scandal. And I see that there's no shrinkage in that amount of money. Has the government been indemnified for all of the expenses associated with starting up the WE contract before the scandal led to its cancellation?
The WE Charity Foundation returned all of the monies that had been advanced to them. What you're seeing in the estimates is a closing out of that amount. So we had initially booked the amount you cited in the estimates, and as there is that is not going to be spent, this amount in the estimates is closing that out to show there is not an intention to spend that money. But
So
I think
there's no reprofiling intended.
no, we are removing that item from the request, and so as these estimates would be approved, you would eliminate that amount we had originally asked for.
Okay, thank you. And coming back to the temporary foreign workers and the additional $4 million, what specifically is that $4 million targeting?
The $4 million was employers are required to do a labor market assessment in order to get the certificate, and they pay fees for those labor market assessments. But as you can imagine, what happened in the crisis was there were individuals who had put the labor market assessment and paid for that, but now because of the crisis determined that they no longer needed those workers. So what the government's providing with the $4 million is a relief from the need to pay those fees. So we're reimbursing the fees that those individual pays for the labor market assessment. That's the 400. That's the $4 million.
Now we're moving into a new calendar year, a new crop year, a planting year, harvesting and so forth. What are the provisions for rollover into the next season with regards to, again, previous contracts, previous obligations?
Happily, we have Alicia online who actually runs the temporary foreign worker program. So Alicia, can I throw it to you?
Certainly, and thank you for the question. So we've taken a number of steps to ensure that employers and workers have some certainty in these very uncertain times. That included extending the duration of labor market impact assessments. These are the assessments that the deputy had just referred to. And so those have been extended from 6 months to 9 months in cases of seasonal workers. And we have also removed some of the recruitment requirements that employers have to undertake in order to be able to receive those labor market impact assessments, given that we've recognized that it's very, very difficult to be recruiting Canadians, particularly for a certain job in the agriculture sector. And so employers who don't have active LMIAs will still have to apply for them. But those who have active LMIA that they've not used will be able to take advantage of those for longer than they normally would.
Okay, thank you,
Mr.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Next, Mr. Turnbull, please, for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses. Great to have you again. So I want to ask a question about the National Autism Strategy. So my constituents in Whitby are very excited at the prospect of the development of a long overdue National Autism Strategy. And I know your department is working alongside the Ministry of Health, and the consultations, I believe, are ongoing. I've met with several constituents and hosted 2 consultation sessions on this, and it's critically important to the people of Durham Region. I want to give a specific shout out to a group called the Durham Crew, which is an incredible group of advocates on this issue in Durham Region. So could you provide me with an update with regards to the timeline for the National Autism Strategy and any progress to date?
So I don't have an update on the specifics. It's obviously the minister's prerogative to determine when ultimately it would be announced. But as you indicated, she has been working with the Minister of Health on this, who is the lead on the strategy. I don't have specific details to offer, but maybe what I could do is take that back and get back to the committee with what has been made public about the timelines on this.
That would be great, Mr. Flack, and I appreciate that very much. I know my constituents would love to continue to be consulted and participate in the development of that strategy. Moving on to another, I think, exciting announcement that came in the throne speech, which was the Disability Inclusion Plan. So many of my constituents have written to me about those supports being so important. Especially since COVID-19 has laid bare so many inequities that exist in our current system for people with disabilities. Could you outline the department's progress on this plan and what steps have been taken to date?
I appreciate the committee has benefited from the speed with which the department's been able to deliver some of these benefits. I would just caution that this pace for every new measure that was announced, and the speech from the throne is quite expansive in terms of what the department is looking for, isn't sustainable. But what I can say is, as would not surprise you, Minister Qualtrough has made it clear that this is her most personally important priority and is pushing us very hard on that. So that includes work we have done around what an actual benefit would look like, looking at the OAS GIS system and the model for that and the legislation around that. It includes mapping the federal provincial dynamics, and this is going to be a very tricky area. As you would know, provincial governments all take very, very different approaches. Some have specific disability benefits. Others really leave it more to their welfare system. So that's going to be a very tricky issue in terms of how to knit those areas together. Second piece that you are starting to see some early movement on, announced in terms of employment, is the minister is determined that not only will our existing employment programs that we have in the department, including the youth employment programs, Canada Summer Jobs, will put a real focus on disability. But for example, the new ISET money that was announced in the fall economic statement, in Indigenous communities, up to 30% of individuals on those training programs are people with disabilities, so it will have a real focus. The last piece of the three in the speech from the throne was changing the way we determine the benefits. That is, I will candidly say, the trickiest, probably the easiest to say, and that is the piece that will take us longest.
Thank you for that. And I recognize there's lots of hard work ahead on this. So, and everyone's been working flat out. So totally understand that this is going to take some time. So, but I appreciate the updates nonetheless. Really quick, last question. I know the Canada Summer Jobs program, there were new flexibilities introduced in the last round for COVID-19. I think a lot of those were well received. So I wondered if you could tell us if there are any of those flexibilities being considered for future iterations of the CSJ program.
Yes, so the minister's intention with the announcement in the fall economic update, and Benoit, you may want to comment on this, is indeed not only to increase the number of jobs from 80,000 to 120,000 for the coming year, in recognition of the fact that we fear the scarring from the crisis may be strongest among youth, and there will be the strongest need to do that. But indeed, her intention is also to maintain the flexibilities that many on this committee have asked to be put in place to maintain those going forward. Benoit, was there anything else out of the economic statement that I missed? You're on mute, Benoit.
Not really. You are quite accurate in the sense that the statement mentioned that we plan to use again this year the flexibility we have used last year to make sure that one of the goals is to ensure that we have as demand as last year for the program, and we could meet our target of increasing the number of jobs we'll create for youth and opportunity for them. So that's all accurate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turnbull, and thank you, witnesses. Je suis désolé, Madame Chabot.
I'm sorry, Madame Chabot, but we have to have the next 15 minutes to discuss certain matters just amongst the members of the committee.
So much for being with us. Thank you so much for your outstanding work during the pandemic. I do hope you get a chance to breathe over the next little while, and that we see you back raring to go in the new year. Again, for everything, thanks for being with us. Thanks for your patient, professional approach.
Chair,
we are now going to move to
Chair. Chair?
Yes, Mr.
Before
Chairman.
you adjourn, if I have
I'm
a
not going to adjourn. We're going to go into committee business, but we're going to be in public.
oh, in public and committee. Okay.
We are. Yeah. Okay. So to
Can
our
I read-
witnesses.
Oh, sorry, Chair. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have a motion I'd like to read. Can I do that now?
let's go to committee business. And I'll recognize you first. I'm in the middle of letting these people go. So to our witnesses, you're welcome to stay, but you're free to leave. We've got about 15 minutes left, and there will be no further questions. So thanks again, and all the best to you over the holiday season. All right. I'm going to recognize Mr. Smale first, and then we're going to go into committee business. Go ahead, Mr. Smale.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to get this motion on notice and into the record if I could. So I'd like to put on notice that the committee conduct a study of no less than 3 two-hour meetings on the implementation of the 7 recommendations found in the committee's 14th report entitled Supporting Families After the Loss of a Child, that the committee invite the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development and departmental officials to appear for 1 hour each, that the committee invite pregnancy and infant loss stakeholder groups to appear for no less than 2 two-hour meetings, that the meetings be televised, and that the committee present its findings to the House. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smale. So that is provided as notice, so it will either go before the subcommittee or before the full committee when we meet again. I presume that's okay? Great, okay. All right, we've set aside this time, colleagues, just so that we can ensure that we're going to be efficient over the break. So we're not going to be meeting again until after the holidays, but we have a substantial amount of work completed with respect to the urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing study, and the analysts have asked for, and I think it's an excellent idea for us to give them some preliminary drafting instructions so that they can get a bit of a start over the next 6 weeks, understanding fully that we will have at least 2 and probably more meetings with witnesses. But this would allow them to get a bit of a jump start to try and get some sense for what the committee might like to see. And I remind you as I open the floor on this that we are in public. I know normally drafting instructions would be done in camera, but with the technology, it is what it is. So I'll lay out a few questions to frame the discussion. I'll ask you to use the raise hand function to provide some direction to the analysts. And I would also invite the analysts to participate in the discussion in terms of asking questions to make sure that we have clarity on what you're being asked. So don't be shy, analysts. So a few questions. Do we want the analysts to integrate the PBO's findings into the draft report? Do we prefer to have recommendations integrated into the report text or presented at the very end of the document? And are there any particular themes that have been raised in the testimony to date that stood out to committee members? So I'll open the floor for any advice that you would like to offer by way of drafting to the analysts, and recognize first Mr. Kent.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would say from the Conservative side, yes, we would like to see the PBO report included. And without sort of foreshadowing the eventual report and recommendations, I wonder if we might, in the next few days, a deadline to be set by yourself, submit written suggestions as to areas of emphasis and specific. But I think we've heard some very wise counsel from Indigenous leaders and band chiefs across the country, and I would hope that some of these individuals with decades of history and successful entrepreneurial work supplemented by federal funds, that we would look very strongly at their advice and their criticisms of some of the existing protocols under CMHC's direction. And as a number of witnesses said, the shrinkage of big dollar commitments made at the federal level by the time the money actually is delivered to the recipients and housing units are built.
Thank you. Ms. Young?
Thank you very much. Our member Kent raised a good point. The wise counsel from the leaders has just been amazing, and I know we're going to hear much more of this, and it's great. I just wondered about the urban, rural, and northern. If we separate in our report, separate those, or if we're bringing them all together. I just wasn't sure of how would be the best way to present it.
Thank you. Ms. Gazan.
Yes, I just wanted to share in terms of the PBO report. My only concern with that is to ensure that the PBO report was identified in the beginning as having some missing pieces in terms of an overall analysis. So I have a concern about presenting the PBO report because, for example, it didn't include wraparound supports. And I think we've gotten a lot of testimony from witnesses that really point to the importance. In terms of, our good colleague, Kate Young here, in terms of separating, the only issues I have with that is because, there's differences in jurisdictional issues from rural and urban. And I'm wondering if rather dividing it like that, whether another way to do it is, also taking into consideration jurisdictional differences in terms of funding. And then in terms of the layout of the report, I think it would be very helpful to have the analysis in a document and then the recommendations at the back. I think if we've seen a lot of the great work that has been done over the past years, whether it be the National Inquiry or the TRC, having a set of calls to action, clearly laid out is, and we can put references of where those recommendations come from in the document, would be kind of an easy, user-friendly model to present the research. Thank you.
Thank you. Madame Chabot.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm just expressing a wish on my part. The people that we heard lead me to think that there are lines that are becoming clear, that are common, independent of whether they are urban, north, or rural. What I found interesting was both on and off reserve. Off reserve, they talked a lot about the urban environment, people who migrate to the urban area. I think that to be able to make it clear, well, I don't want to have a report where we cite witness after witness, but how can we look at what is common to all of that and what is different? How do they differ one from the other as well? So their commonalities and their differences. If we want to have a type of fluid analysis. I think it really deals with the way in which we're going to build our report. But as far as, we can put the recommendations at the end and not in the middle. The report of the Parliamentary Budget Officer, I mean. Yes, the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Yes, that's all. Thank you, Madame Chabot.
Please.
Thank you. A couple of thoughts. I think there need to be particular observations and components of the report that relate directly to urban, rural, and northern. My experience within the housing sector tells me that the construction timelines in the north require an approach that the land values and some of the economic challenges of rural Canada are very different from urban, and also the land costs are very different in urban space, plus that the multinational nature of the urban population is also a challenge to be reckoned with. So I would support splitting those into three distinct streams with distinct recommendations, But I also think that the strength of this program will be made more profound if it's all included under one program. So I would structure it in 4 ways. I would have a general commonalities and then specific recommendations around the U, the R, and the N in terms of 4 distinct sections. The second thing is that I agree with Ms. Gazan in terms of the PBO report. It left out, sort of provincial transfers. It didn't get into some of the social supports which need to be integrated within a housing system. And so while the PBO report was helpful, I wouldn't rely on it as a foundational document because it doesn't cover the full scope of the testimony that we heard. And from my perspective, in terms of where emphasis needs to be placed in terms of helping the ministers responsible to deliver this program, we really need to have a firm understanding of the scale of the problem we're trying to address across all 3 sectors, what the populations are in all 3 sectors, if that's possible, and also a very firm, a very principled, and a very strong statement about Indigenous-led, Indigenous designed, Indigenous delivered, and the importance of this program being standalone. While it may rely on CMHC for some expertise that it can bring in-house, that it be a standalone program in the same way that the AFN, the ITK, and the Métis Nation are separate, distinct governing bodies. This report, I think we heard it very clearly, especially from Mr. Swain, how critical it is for it to be an Indigenous-led, Indigenous designed, and just delivered program. And I think that emphasis can't be understated. Otherwise, we'll have failed in our mission. The last thing I would say about it, I think Mr. Kent's advice of submitting some details around evidence that we have access to in our notes or in testimony that may have been delivered to our offices away from the committee, because there's been actually a lot of people following this online. I think that idea of submitting, but if we could submit to all of us so we can make sure that we're all working from the same pages when we get back, I think would be very helpful for the committee administrator to share the written submissions that come. And then the last thing I'll say on this is we had testimony, we had advice, and we had observations and understandings from treaty rights or treaty holding organizations, as well as on reserve housing programs. Those are served by other programs in very distinct and very intentional ways. And I think we need to be careful to make sure we understand and adhere to the clear testimony that came from those people, particularly working in the urban spaces, how far away from accessing those dollars urban and rural and northern communities are. And if we conflate those, I think we will end up doing an immense disservice to the 87% of Indigenous people who live off reserve. This program is meant to focus entirely on off-reserve experiences and modern treaty experiences in the distinct way which they are not served by the 3 NIOs. And I think that's the whole point of the study. And I can't overstate that enough, having looked at it for a couple of years now.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughan. Mr. Schmale.
Thank you, Chair. And a lot of what I was going to say has already been said, but I'll try not to repeat myself and others. I agree with what Mr. Vaughan just said about the numbers the report focused on those members who have left their communities and moved and migrated into urban centers. I think that is an important thing to focus on, the fact that there are so many of these issues and organizations trying to pick up the pieces on this. So I agree, it does have to take an urban focus, but also the fact that we heard from testimony that there are a number of issues on reserve that still need to be worked on, especially around opportunities and how we get there. And we heard from a number of chiefs, including the one from Mr. Viss's writing, about what they are doing on reserve to provide opportunities for those that want to stay or able to stay, that kind of thing. And I think we need to focus on. We just need to include that so that we are aware that we're able to deal with the problems, or at least hear about them in the report, and maybe some particular solutions on both sides. And the rest was already said by Mr. Kent as well. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Schmale, Mr. Turnbull, please.
I agree with everything that's been said. I would just say, I think if we can get a summary of the testimony and evidence that's maybe themed based on the analysis that the analyst does, I think that would be very helpful in formulating recommendations. and then perhaps we can all submit our recommendations, and then have the deep discussions and debates about how those get combined. Some of the themes that stand out to in my mind are, I think we heard very strongly that there needs to be some kind of a national coalition that's Indigenous led. Something else that stands out to me is I think we heard a lot about innovative models, about culturally based services. I think there's, I would say that the report should center on lived experience, which I think is really important. And something else that stood out to me was the economic reconciliation and the opportunities to ensure that addressing homelessness and housing furthers Indigenous people's economic self-sufficiency and self-determination. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. We have one of our analysts that wants to chime in.
Thank you, Mr.
Go right
Chair.
ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick question for the committee. There was a bit of discussion about members submitting suggestions for themes or recommendations. How does the committee wish us to proceed in this manner if, for example, members may submit ideas or themes that conflict or are quite similar? How should we choose what to include, or is this happening at the report consideration phase?
I'd like to maybe take a run at that question, and we've got a couple of other people on the speakers list, but I mean, you're getting a bit of a barrage of ideas. I'm not sure that there's any real conflict in any of them so far. But my sense of this is that we probably shouldn't be limited to the advice that committee members give you, either in terms of content or in terms of time, given that we're going to have at least 2 and maybe 3 more meetings before we actually get to any final drafting of a report and consideration of the report. So my view would be that all members should be encouraged to provide whatever guidance they wish to you. If once you see those written submissions, you have questions, you're more than welcome to pose them to me, and then I can go back through the committee in an informal email basis over the break if that's what's necessary. But my thought is, let's maximize the opportunity for input, knowing full well that we'll have the chance to revise it, because it's still a work in progress. Nothing that is said or done would be final. That would be my gut on it, and I welcome the views of others. Mr. Viss, please.
Well, the only thing I really want to add, excuse me, a long day, is that I wish everyone a Merry Christmas. I hope everyone takes some time to, or Happy Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa. And I just wish everyone a wonderful time to relax with their families. It's been a really crazy year for everyone, and sometimes we get a little heated sometimes, but generally we keep good spirits in this committee, and I wish everyone a restful break. Take care.
Well, thank you, Mr. Viss. Ms. Gazan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Viss, and I'm going to destroy the moment by getting back to talking about work. I apologize, but the last consideration I think would be really helpful, particularly because the government is currently in the process of releasing a national action plan in response to the MMIWG report. We had a number of witnesses testify about housing related to Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA. That's a very specialized area, and certainly, an area in desperate need of attention, whether it's safe spaces or more housing. I think it might be a worthwhile consideration to have a separate piece of the report specifically geared to that, because the needs, and also in saying that, I think if anything I noticed was missing certainly is that maybe in the future we need to have a disability lens on all research certainly because the intersection between disabilities and being Indigenous create totally different scenarios, and it'd be nice to learn more about that going forward. And with that, I wish everybody a happy holidays. I'm tired as well. I'm sure everybody is, and hope you have a restful break.
Okay, we've reached the end of the list. So a couple of points. Feel free at your leisure to provide supplemental advice or direction to the analysts. And to the analysts, if you have any clarifying questions or concern about potential conflict in terms of input, I'd be happy to quarterback a response informally through the committee to make sure you get what you need. And with respect to the PBO issues, my recollection is that we had given a mandate letter to the PBO, and if I'm not sure that we've actually received the full report that was mandated, but even if we have, I really think that one of our meetings or part of one of our meetings should be dedicated to questioning the PBO on the report. So I would expect that we'll get a little more clarity on that when we have a report and are afforded the opportunity to ask questions about it. So if I hope this has been of some assistance to the analyst to have a project to work on over the next month, and remain at your disposal for any any further questions if things aren't clear enough. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? To all of the House of Commons folks that support us, thank you. To all of my colleagues, thank you for your courtesy throughout. I wish you nothing but the very best in the upcoming season and look forward to working with you again in the new year, and like you, look forward to seeing the end of 2020. Thanks, colleagues. Have a good evening.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Be well.
Safe travels
Stay
all.
safe.
Safe travels all.